everyone, I'm Kimberly from Dirt Floor Fibers and welcome back. I am actually starting something new this week and we'll see how it goes, but I'm super excited about it. So I've been watching some different things on YouTube. In the past, I've always loved watching videos that were on a particular topic, like I would be interested in craft fair setups or a particular yarn or knitting technique or something, and I would look up a video about that. But I never watched a lot of knitting like podcasts or vlogs or anything like that that were like episodes that came out on a regular basis. I don't really have a reason why, I just never really got into them. But when I was prepping for the craft fair, that was last weekend before, I've lost track of time already. But I started watching a lot of podcasts just because I needed something on in the background that engaged part of my mind, but didn't really require a ton of attention, and I didn't have to have my eyes on the screen all the time. And I actually found that I kind of like them. Some of the ones I've been watching a lot lately include Grocery Girls Knit, Fiber and Fox, that's Bella from used to be Bella's Custom Crochet, but she's been Fiber and Fox for a while now, and Nitty Natty. Now, one of the things that I enjoyed about watching those was, the fact that it was very conversational, and I just it was like having another knitter hanging out in the room with me and talking at me while I was working on something else, which was really great for keeping me focused. But I also found that they were really motivational, especially when they talked about what kind of projects they've completed in the previous week. Because I kind of was like, I'm one of those people, we'll put it this way, I'm one of those people where I get really distracted by the next shiny thing. And so I have boatloads of works in progress. I have tons of yarn that's earmarked for projects that I'm super excited about, but then I get excited about the next project and get materials before I finish the previous one. And so actually seeing what these other knitters and crocheters and crafters, what they're producing, what they're getting finished each week, it's kind of motivated me. I'm very competitive. And so I kind of go like, oh, well, if they finished a sweater this week, I better get knitting on mine. So I just got really excited about all of that. And so I thought, hey, you know what? This summer, when I have a little bit more time, why don't I do kind of a week in review sort of post? And that way I can talk about any cool purchases I got in the mail that week, any new yarns I'm trying out, patterns that I'm loving or I want to get on the needles, things that I've actually completed, all those works in progress that I've checked off my list. And then I was thinking to myself that I do that a lot. I think about something that I would like to do, and I'm like, you know what, the perfect time to start that would be next week or next month or next year. I'm definitely going to accomplish that. And I was like, why don't I just start it right now? So I don't know how consistent I'll be until we hit the summer, but my goal is every Sunday to kind of record a week in review and then post the video on Monday, either Sunday or Monday, but most likely on Monday. And I figured that'd be great practice for when I really get into the swing of things in the summer. So that's what my goal is. This is episode number 1. Welcome to my week in review. Some exciting things did happen this week. First, on a personal note, it is this week that's in front of me. It's going to be spring break. And so I have so many things on my list to accomplish, but I'm super excited about having that time. Plus, the weather is gorgeous. It's getting a little bit warmer outside. It stopped raining for right now, so hopefully that trend continues. It's going to be a really busy week, but I'm looking forward to it. And because I don't have enough on my plate, I decided to get myself chickens. Yes, I have 7 chickens out in my mudroom right now in a homemade brooder. I set them up in I'll see if I can get a picture, but I tried taking a picture earlier in the heat lamp and just making everything red so you couldn't really see anything. But I set them up in just a Rubbermaid tote sort of container. I'm so sorry, the dogs are barking. Okay, it's slightly better now. There's a golden retriever walking down the street out front, and it's the golden retriever that's always off leash and likes to growl at my dogs. And so it's like their enemy. They always like to bark. Although they like to bark anyway, to be fair. Anyway, sorry. So my chickens are downstairs. I have them in their little Rubbermaid type tote. And then I took some of my craft fair crates and I put one sideways so it had the bottom facing up, and then I put another one tall ways on top of it and clamped my heat lamp to it. and then got, you know, everything set up inside, pine shavings on the bottom and a feeder and a waterer. And then I had a folding pet pen, I guess, from back when I used to let my chinchillas run around in one of those little pens before I had the dogs. And I actually just took that and unfolded it and put it over the top of the tubs. That way, when the birds start getting their wing feathers in, they start flying around a little bit, they won't be able to get out. And hopefully that also discourages the dogs from putting their heads in the bin as soon as they walk out into the mud room. But I'm really excited. I got, I'm trying to remember what kind of chickens I got. They were black Australorp, or 4 of them. And then they had another, it was like a green speckled egger or something like that. It had the word green and egger somewhere in its name. But the only problem was that they were also in the same bin as the white leghorns, something like that, which are of course a meat bird instead of a layer. And there was one that was definitely the speckled egger. It was a lot darker, but the woman who worked there was like, you know, I'm pretty sure these other 2 birds are also the eggers because they've got a little bit of brown. Usually the other ones are all like a whitish, yellowish color. And so I got 3 of those. However, looking at them more, I'm pretty sure I have at least one of the meat birds in there. So I might go back and get a couple more of the black Australorps just to round out those numbers in case I do end up with a couple of meat birds. But I might not, because you know, I might find another breed a little bit later that I want to add to my coop as well. So one of my big projects this week is I have this horrible shed in my backyard that I hate and I want to tear it down, but it's super expensive to get someone to actually come in, tear it down, and haul it away. So I'm going to do some renovations on it, and I'm going to turn it into a chicken coop and then put up a little fence in the backyard so they have some free range room. It's going to be interesting, but I'm really excited. I always like to think of myself as being a handy person. In reality, I'm always afraid of messing things up, but this shed is so old and there's no plumbing in it, and I've cut off the electrical to it, so there's nothing I can hurt. You know, I can't electrocute myself. The building's already terrible, so the worst thing that happens is I can't use it and I have to get a different chicken coop. So sorry, hang on one more second again. The puppy has started barking. All right, sorry, the dogs bark at absolutely everything. I am living for the day where I can finally get my farm out in the country and then they can sit outside on the porch and bark at anything they want without bothering anybody. But in the meantime, they bother everybody. But anyways, so I've got those chickens. I'm gonna fix up my shed, so I'll let you know how that goes this week. I'm not sure how much I'll get finished, but I got a few weeks until the birds will be ready to move outside anyway. That's it on the personal front. For events, I don't have anything coming up until my first farmer's market on May 7th in Irvington. I'm not quite doing any prep work for that yet, but I am starting to think about what I might want to do for a display. I'm thinking I want to do something smaller, maybe just one 8-foot table, or I think the 6-foot table would be too small, but I'm going to play with some single table setups just because with my tent in the car, it takes up so much room. And I loved the wooden box display that I used at my big craft fair, but it takes up so much room. And so I don't know. So I'm just gonna play around with that and see if I can find something a little bit smaller. I'm also looking at some different, kind of more professional looking, fancier fold up displays. They're really expensive though. And I think the lead time on that is like 8 to 10 weeks. So I might put in an order for a couple of pieces and see, but that's for a whole other day. We'll see when those actually come in. But no events on the horizon, not until May 7th. Now I am excited. I do have a finished object to show, and I do apologize. They're actually dirty right now because I've worn them a couple of times. But the story behind this, I work at Colonial Williamsburg part-time in the evenings. I used to work there full-time. But I always like to have an 18th century project on the go, and one of the ones that I love the most are stockings because they're easy, they're practical, people are really impressed when you have all the double pointed needles, and so I really, really like doing 18th century style stockings. This particular pair, I've been working on them for probably at least 5 or 6 years. And for at least the last 4 years, they've been completely finished except for one stocking I had to close up the toe. And they've sat in my living room with the needles in them for 4 years. And I keep walking by. And finally, I have one coworker who always makes fun of me and the fact that I can't finish my stockings. And we were working together the other night. And so I was like, I'm going to finish these stockings and I am going to wear them. So I did. It took like maybe 10 minutes tops to finish up the toe and weave in all the ends of those stockings. And then they were finished. But this particular pattern, I got out of a piecework magazine. I couldn't find my actual magazine, but fortunately I took a picture of the pattern, so that'll be relevant in a few minutes. But it's from a piecework magazine, at least 2015, maybe earlier. I do remember that it had a woman on the cover wearing a white kind of cabled vest. I'm hoping to find that magazine because there's a couple other patterns in there that I really like. But the pattern is based on a pair of stockings from, I think, the late 1500s. And something really interesting about this, when I was wearing these the other night, I'm actually knitting another pair of these, which is why the pattern was important. I had some guests walk by and they were watching what I was doing. And it was like a grandmother with her granddaughter. They were really sweet. They were lovely people. But the grandma leans over to her granddaughter and says to her, "See, they didn't have heels in their socks back in the 18th century. And I heard it. I'm like, yes, they did have heels in their socks. I'm just not to my heel yet. I'm the one I'm making. And so we had a lovely conversation. Unfortunately, I was wearing these and could tell her all about them because these are actually based on a pair of stockings from I think the late 1500s. Those, of course, were silk and of a slightly finer yarn weight, but I only have so much time on my hands, so we weren't going quite that authentic. They're really neat. They do have a false kind of garter stitch seam going up the back from when it was popular. Some stockings were sewn out of fabric. Those were like the really nice fine ones. And so of course you had a seam going up the back. And so they started putting a false seam in knitted stockings to make them look like they were the fancy sewn ones. So I loved putting that in. The heel is a really interesting construction. I don't knit a lot of socks, and so I don't know if anybody actually uses this type of heel anymore. A lot of my knitting blogs, those knitting vlogs and podcasts I've been watching, have been liking the fish lips kiss heel or something like that. Never tried one before, but apparently they're good. But this is a common heel. And so basically once you get down to the ankle, you do a heel flap and that little false seam goes all the way down the heel. When it's long enough, you decrease, you do decreases to create a little cup. And then when you get to here, this gets sewn, or I think it was maybe even a 3 needle bind off together. And then you go around and get the rest, pick up all the instep stitches and then pick up stitches all around there. And then you work the gussets, and then the bottom of the foot has these fun kind of increases to make it larger. And then you end up with a toe. So that's basically what it looks like. And I really like this pattern. This is actually the second pair of stockings I've made from this pattern. I have a green pair that I really like. I think they were a wool silk blend, if I'm not mistaken. But I think I made a little mistake on this one because my other pair I really, really like, and the bottoms lay flat when I put them on. This particular pair, where all this comes together here, it actually pokes out. And I think the reason why is because I made the foot ever so slightly too short. I think if I had made the foot just a little bit longer, it would lay flat. So I'm definitely, when I make my new pair, going to make sure that my foot is a little bit longer. I don't want to have any negative ease in it. I want to make sure it lays really nice and flat. But anyways, so these are my new stockings, all finished. Like I said, I've only worn them twice. I love them, 100% wool. We'll see how they wash up. I'll wash them by hand, of course. But yeah, so absolutely love those. And I also, before I had even finished those, started a new pair. And again, these have been sitting on my needles for years. And every once in a while I'll pull them out and start working on them again. But I'm determined to actually finish up this second pair and never knit a pair of stockings again, which is a lie. I knit them all the time. But anyways, so same pattern, different yarn. I think this one might have a little bit of nylon in it, or it might be a super wash wool. It's a little bit softer than the other. I think it's a Cascade, but I've lost the wrapper to the ball of yarn. And I'm actually kind of concerned because these take 2 balls of yarn, not 2 full ones, but it takes more than one. And my dog at some point in time had gotten a hold of the other skein of this, and it is so tangled that I've stuffed it away somewhere. And every once in a while, I'll spend like 5 minutes trying to untangle it, and then I give up again. So I'm really, really hoping that I can get that untangled and actually be able to finish my stockings. Now, these might be a long time work in progress just because I only knit them in Williamsburg, but we'll see what I can accomplish by the end of summer. So hopefully, end of summer is my goal to get those all finished. All right, so my other whip, which has been around for a while as well, when I reorganized my stash when I was cleaning out this room, I had taken a bunch of yarn that I had together for projects and put them all in one place. The problem was that a lot of those were kits that I bought from Kitterly, which when I was doing all that reorganization, I was like, oh, I should probably print those patterns and put them with the yarn, and then that way I know what it is I want to do. The only problem is I went online and realized that Kitterly's not a thing anymore. So all those patterns that I bought, gone. Yeah, so was super upset about that, but I'm like, I make backups of my backups. I've got to have these patterns somewhere. And so I actually found on my work computer, I had a file where I had downloaded all my Kitterly patterns and then accidentally uploaded them and backed them up with all of my school files. So I have all my patterns again, so I'm really, really excited. And so I decided I would dive into one of them. This is actually a free pattern now. I don't know if it was a free pattern back then, but it is now. This is the Manos del Uruguay Pradera, Pradera wrap. And apparently I'm very into chevrons lately, but it takes 4 different color skeins of the Manos del Uruguay Clara yarn, which is a 100% superwash merino single. This is unfortunately discontinued. They don't carry this yarn anymore, but you could easily do it with whatever yarn you wanted to. I think this is either, it could be a fingering weight, it could be a sport. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember what it is, but it's a fade, so you don't even necessarily need 4. And it does take a 6mm needle because you're holding the strands double. But this is what I have done so far, and I'll stick a little progress keeper up here so that way when we check in next week I can show you how much I've gotten done on it. I really, really want to get this done in the next couple of weeks. Not that I can wear it or anything, because it's going to be the middle of summer, but it's really super soft. The yarn, because it's being held double and the fact that it's singles, is really, really airy and lofty and soft and squishy, and it's so fabulous. But it has kind of this chevron shaped pattern to it. And as I said, it's a free pattern online now. If I remember to, I'll link it below so you can take a look. I did change it a little bit. It does say to do 42 rows with the first color held double with just the first color. But I really wanted to just use all 4 skeins of yarn and make a giant, gorgeous, squishy wrap. And so I obviously didn't stop at 42 rows. I also don't know if it meant like double that because you're doing row 1 and 2 repeat, I don't know. And then I did a little fade by holding 1 strand of the light pink with 1 strand of this darker pink together, and then just knit until I ran out of the light pink. And then now I'm holding that one double. And I did that just by winding a center pull ball of yarn, and then that way I could hold 1 strand from the middle and 1 strand from the outside. It does get really tangled and wrapped around itself as I knit, especially if I pull it out from the middle and it gets tangled and it comes out a big clog. So that's kind of the trickiest part, but yep, that's what that looks like so far. And then we'll check in next week and see how much more I've managed to get finished. I'm hoping to at least be on to my next color by then. Then I've got another whip that's a knitting project. This one is the Linen Chevron Cowl by Linda Thatch, Thach. Again, I'll see if I can get a link to that. And it's another free pattern on Ravelry. Now that particular pattern calls for 1 skein of Shibui linen yarn. which is a fingering weight, if I'm not mistaken, and a 3.75 needle. But I had some Euroflax in my stash, which is a sport weight, and it's a yarn that is grown, and the linen for it is grown in, not the linen, the flax is grown and wet spun in Belgium. This color is either the pewter or the charcoal. I think it's the pewter, but I can't remember off the top of my head, and I couldn't find the ball band. But it's just a really nice kind of dark gray color. It's interesting because in the picture, even though she's using a lighter weight yarn, hers doesn't look as open and airy as mine does, and I'm using a heavier yarn on the same needle. And hers also looks like it's larger than mine, again, even though she's using a finer yarn. So I'm just gonna keep going with it and see how that works. I really want to have, oh no, I've lost a stitch. There we go, okay. Crisis averted, we're okay now. I wanted to have some samples using the Euroflax because I do have a wholesale account with them. And so I have a bunch of minis right now that I'm gonna have for sale at the farmers markets. And then hopefully I'll be able to expand to the actual 100-gram balls of yarn as well once I figure out if people like it and what colors they like. But it is it's linen, so it's kind of tough and scratchy. And so when people come up and they, have a nice soft like merino, they're like, oh, that's so nice. And they come, you can't really pet the linen. So I'm hoping if I have some examples out there, I can show people how nice it really is. You don't want to use a ball winder though to make a cake of yarn for your flax. It just falls apart. And if you're having trouble with a flax or a linen yarn because it's so stiff, if you wind it into a ball and then rewind it into a ball again, it kind of breaks up those fibers a little bit, and so it becomes a little more supple and easy to work with. I definitely noticed a difference after I rewound the ball again. And then of course, every time you wash it, it becomes softer and softer. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like when it's all finished. Then of course I have a spinning work in progress. I got my next Fiber of the Month Club box in the mail, and it came with 2 different spring related fibers. The first one was 4 ounces of tea and crumpets. And this is let's see if I can hold it up and get an idea of the color. Sorry, my light's starting to fade, so it's a little bit hard to tell. And I'm so sorry about the whining in the background. I locked Ivan out of the office, and now he's making like super intense eye contact with me, and he's crying. So I'll have to go and check in with him in a little bit. But it's this yarn, this fiber is called Tea and Crumpets. And it's got like some like lavenders and yellows and pale greens. It's very Eastery, very pretty color. And it's made of 60% merino, 25% tencel, 10% sari silk, which was interesting because when I looked at it, you can't really see the sari silk so much. Like you have to look really, really close to see like the little bumps of it. So it's really kind of cool. And then a 5% glitter stellina. So it does have a little bit of a sparkle to it. Let's see if the sunlight will catch it there. So that's that. It had 4 ounces of this. And then it also came with 4 ounces of cherry blossom, which this one is a really neat fiber. Don't know if you can see it on the camera. But it is 75% merino and 25% viscose tweed nets. And so it has all these little bumps in it to make a tweed. And the fiber itself probably is white with maybe a little bit of like lavender or purple, but then it's the pink and purple neps that really give it its color. And so what I'm actually doing with this is I've split it into 3. I've got, and actually some of this is on my spinning wheel right now, but about 2.66 ounces of the tea and crumpets, 2.66 of the cherry blossom, and then what was left over, I've taken and I'm holding it together because what I'm gonna do is spin all of this, ply it together on itself, spin all of this, ply it together on itself, and then I'm gonna start spinning with one of the fibers. When it finishes, I'm gonna jump in and finish with the other one. And then I'm gonna apply the two different ones together. And then there might be, if I'm not perfect with my spinning, like if there's different amounts of fiber or one's a little longer than the other, it'll self-twist. Like it'll be, ooh, hang on a second. My low battery warning came up on my phone, sorry about that. It'll be plied with itself, which is fine for my project. So then what it'll do is it'll create a gradient where I can knit with the one that's been plied together, and then finish with the one that's been plied to itself again. So it'll make a gradient, not so much out of colors, but out of actual different fibers that have been spun together. So I'm really, really curious to try out that project. I'm super excited about that. All right, so I think that's everything on my list for this week. Let me know in the comments below what you accomplished in the last week, or what kind of whips you have on your needles, or what kind of knitting projects you're looking forward to as the weather gets warmer. So thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit, and then I will check in with you again on next Sunday. See you then.